Welcome to Lone Crow Adventures, the channel that's about all things camping, hiking, and backpacking. If it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button. There is a ton of great content on this channel I know you'll enjoy. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my very favorite breakfast jerky recipe. Let's go! The jerky that we're going to be making today is a breakfast sausage jerky with a maple flavor. I'm using the LEM jerky gun, and this gun is to be used when you're going to make ground meat jerky, which is perfect for our job today. The dehydrator is the Presto Dehydro, which is expandable up to 8 trays, and this allows you to make a nice big batch. So next I'm going to be introducing my ingredients list. I'm going to show you the spices that you need to use to make 1 pound of sausage breakfast jerky. So the first and most important spice is this maple sugar cinnamon spice, and this is made by Skinny Sticks. I use 2 tablespoons of maple cinnamon sugar spice. If you like a sweeter jerky or a stronger tasting maple, you can go ahead and add 2.5 to 3. If you add more than 2, you're going to get a very sweet jerky, so keep that in mind. 2 other ingredients. We have garlic powder, 1/4 teaspoon of that, and onion powder, also 1/4 teaspoon. We get all those spices in there, give it a quick shake. Then you can just add your meat there to the bowl directly and hand blend it. I would recommend, if you are making more than 1 pound of this breakfast jerky, that you mix it up a single pound at a time, just so that way you can be sure that it gets thoroughly coated with all the spices that you're gonna need. So the process I do here, I just kind of roll it around in the bottom of the bowl, and then cut with my fingers. All right, so we have it all mixed up, and now I'm going to let it sit for about 10 minutes and let those spices really interact with the meat, and then we'll load up the jerky gun. Now our meat has sat for about 10 minutes and we're ready to load up the jerky gun. Now there's 2 ways that you can do this next step. You can go ahead and load up the jerky gun and put your strips right into the dehydrator. If you do this, keep in mind that sausage is a very high fat content meat, and you're going to have to remove those strips every 30 to 40 minutes for the first couple hours. Put them on a paper towel and pat them dry to get that extra grease off of them. The way that I get around this is that I put my strips onto a cookie sheet and I put it in the oven at 300 degrees for 10 minutes. It's not long enough to cook the jerky, but what it will do is it will cook off some of that excess fat, and I'll get some of that oil out of it right from the hop, and I'll transfer it to the dehydrator after that point. So let's go ahead and get this jerky gun loaded up and we'll get started. We're ready to load up the jerky gun. This was the very first jerky gun I've ever owned. It's the only jerky gun I've ever owned. I'm not overly impressed with it, largely due to its small capacity, and this little nut on the end seems to constantly be coming loose. So if you guys have a different jerky gun that you use with success, leave it in the comments below, because I'm looking to get an upgrade for this. So we'll take our meat, and you know, there's no clean way to do this. It's kind of a disgusting process. You just stick it in, try to minimize the amount of meat that gets stuck on the outside. Like I said, I'm not overly thrilled with this jerky gun. I wasn't sure when I bought it if making jerky was going to be something that I enjoyed. I'll get that first strip off there. All right. And when I put them on the cookie sheet, I like to make these strips about 4 or 5 inches long, and I separate them by maybe about 1/4 of an inch or so. The entire jerky making process from start to finish takes about 6 hours. And there we go. We've got the first tray ready to go in the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this in there. All right, we've got the oven heated up. So we'll pop those in there, 10 minutes. So it's been 10 minutes. Go ahead and take them out. And you'll notice that there is a tremendous amount of oil that has come off of that meat already. So let that pan cool off, and then we're gonna dab dry those jerky strips. So our jerky strips are done. So I'm just gonna be careful with them, and I'm gonna put them on this paper towel because there's still a lot of oil on the strips. And we're going to put them on the dehydrator tray, and we're going to let it dehydrate between 4 and 5 hours. And at about the 2.5 hour mark, we're going to check the jerky again, because we'll have to remove the strips from the dehydrator and put them on a paper towel again just to remove the excess oil that'll be on them by that point. Putting them on this tray definitely reduces the amount of grease that you're going to end up having in the bottom of your dehydrator. That's the primary reason that I do this with this high fat content meat. And we can take the strips and put them on the dehydrator tray. Ha! Voila! All right, then we'll put the lid on the dehydrator, and we will come back in 2.5 hours to dab these off again, and we'll show you what they'll look like at that point. And I'm gonna go ahead and make a couple more pounds of jerky since I've got all the supplies out. The jerky has been dehydrating for about 2.5 hours, and when I look in through the top of the dehydrator, I notice that oil is starting to pool on the top of the jerky. So it's time to remove the jerky, put it on the paper towel, and just dab some of that excess oil off the top. Just to give you an idea of what to look for when you're looking for that first oil off cycle, this would be what the jerky would look like. And when you take it off, you'll notice that the underside is just completely saturated with oil. So this right here is one of the reasons that it's essential that you cut the cook cycle at about the midway point. You'll notice there is a tremendous amount of oil that has collected at the bottom of the dehydrator, and it's pooling around the edges. But if I were to not take this jerky off, I run the risk of flooding the fan and the motor with oil. So to deal with this, you just take a paper towel and you just sop it up. And if you're planning on making this kind of a jerky without using the cookie sheet method in the oven, that's why it's so essential that you have to check that jerky every half hour at the beginning of the cook cycle 4 or 5 times, because it will give off so much oil that you risk damaging the dehydrator itself. Our jerky is fully done dehydrating at this point. I've temperature tested it and it is within a safe cooking temperature. So now it's time to take it out of the dehydrator and transfer it to the paper towel just to get any excess oil off of it that might have accumulated in the last hour and a half. Once we get it on the paper towel, we can let it cool for about 30 minutes. And once it's nice and cool, you can go ahead and bag it up any way that you want. I use a Ziploc bag. Some people like to use a food vacuum sealer, but I'm going to be eating this jerky in the very near future, so it's not going to be around long enough to warrant vacuum sealing it. The jerky is cooled off and we're ready to store it. I like to use this 1 quart size Ziploc bag. With this type of jerky, if you're not going to vacuum seal it, you can go ahead and you can leave it out at room temperature for a week or 2. But if you're going to store it for an extended period of time, you're going to want to pop it in the fridge. And that's because the high amount of fat inside of this jerky does create optimal conditions for mold to grow. So if you're going to use it within 14 days of making it, you can go ahead and store it in your pack or in the pantry. But if you're trying to stock up on jerky months in advance of going on a trip, throw it in the fridge, and that way it'll be nice and fresh. So we've got the jerky wrapped up and we're ready to weigh it. So 3 pounds of sausage turns into 1 pound, 1.5 ounces of jerky. So you can use that as a guideline if you're trying to determine how much you should make for your needs. All right, let's give this the verdict. So, it's delicious. Well, thanks for joining me. I hope that you guys learned something about jerky from the video, and I hope that it has inspired you to go and make some jerky. If you haven't already done so, now's the time to hit that subscribe button. And while you're here, why don't you check out a few of my other videos? We'll see you next time, folks.